Okay, my brother, John, and I want to welcome all our family members and friends who have come here today to remember my father, RML Rogers, as he was always known as. Dad was born in San Francisco, California on September 22nd, 1908, to Robert and Daisy Bell Rogers. His sister, Eva, was 4 years older than Dad. The family moved to Manchester, England shortly after his birth, and they lived in England during World War I. Dad's mother and father divorced in England, and my grandfather returned to the United States with my father and sister when Dad was about age 8. That's a guess. Okay. And actually, if anybody's interested in it, we actually have the boat, the manifest of the ship when they came across. Cool. Dad ran away from home about age 15. My grandfather considered him incorrigible, and he went into the Merchant Marine Navy. And he saw a lot of the world at an early age. And there's a lot of stories about that, of which in his memoirs. He met our mother, Constance Loretta Kappas, actually Constance Loretta Kappas Spencer, because my mother had been married previously, in 1936 in San Francisco, and they were married on January 1st, 1937. They bought a home in San Francisco, and we lived there until we moved to Washington in 1952. I was born in June 1938, and John was born in June 1939. Our sister Helen came to live with us when she was age 3 in 1951. We moved here in June of 1952 and cleared the land and started to build a house. It took at least 30 years to get the siding put on the house. In the earlier years, Mom and John hauled water in an old Chevrolet pickup with 4 wooden barrels for water for the house until that well was finally put in.
Wasn't put in.
Well, dug. Yeah, slave labor. Anyway, Mom passed away suddenly on January 8, 1988 with a heart attack. They had been married for 51 years. For the remaining years, Dad had a couple of lady friends that stayed here with him. The last lady was Bridget. Dad always wanted to stay here on the property, so we have decided as a family to spread both his ashes and my mother's here on the property. My mother took care of him for 51 years, so I guess that now she can do it again. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Well, I'll fill in some of the blanks.
I made it real short. So.
Well, my dad, when he left, he bummed his way around the world.
Right.
My brother talked about him being in the Merchant Marine. Well, he literally bummed his way around the world several times. Went to China, went to a bunch of countries. One of the places he ended up in was the Philippines. And him and a partner of his, and he's always had lots of partners throughout his life, started to grow. I think they were growing sugar cane there, but they had a huge amount of land. But Dad caught every single disease that was available. He had typhoid fever, he had sleeping sickness, jungle rot, it just went on and on. The doctors told him, you better get out of here, you're catching everything that's coming by, you're going to die. So he went back to San Francisco, and there he started some gambling businesses. He started a casino in San Francisco, and he also had a little 2 or 3 barbershops that he was running book out of. The old man always said he had a little larceny in his blood, and he certainly did. One of his partners was Caesar from Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, famous guy. He was one of Dad's partners in San Francisco when they were running the casinos there. And he was making a lot of money during the Depression, where people were making $12 and $14 a week. He was taking $400 and $500 home a night. And it was a huge amount of money those days. He had a couple Packard Roadsters. He had a full-time bodyguard, stayed at the house with him. And he had another bodyguard that would pick him up and when they went down to the casinos. So a pretty lively life, and my mother was totally against him in the casinos. Oh, and by the way, when he married my mother, they disowned him. His family disowned him. Said he married beneath his stature. And that was...
And my mother's parents weren't happy either.
No, she was German and he was English, so that was a bad thing. And she was like a German housekeeper too, so she was, certainly below what supposedly he was. But at the time, he said to me later, much later in years, but he said at the time he felt that they were going to wise up to him eventually anyway. So he would have probably been disowned whether he married her or not. So. And they certainly had a good long life together. During the war, when the war broke out, he actually tried to join the service. He was kind of a flag waver, and they wouldn't take him because he had typhoid fever and sleeping sickness and jungle rot and all these things. And the jungle rot came back on him several times. Sleeping sickness didn't, but typhoid fever was apt to, and it never did. He sold out on the gambling business during the Second World War and went to work in the shipyards, where he managed to contact an additional problem, and that was asbestosis. In the shipyards, working in the boiler rooms, his specialty was steam and hydraulics. He was a mechanical engineer, went back to school and got that after he came back to San Francisco. So he had been around a lot. And over the years, one of the things he did was he had a toast that he gave every single New Year's Day. So he would wait till the strike of midnight and then he would give his toast. And here a couple of years ago, I noticed that he was kind of mumbling through the middle part of that toast. And he said to me, he said, "Get me the words to that toast because I'm kind of forgetting them." I said, "Sure, no problem." So the only part of the toast I remembered was the last line. And I looked up the last line on the internet and I got a few hits on it, but it was other people that were using part of that poem on their websites. And I had a hell of a time. I couldn't find it. And then when he went into the hospital, I made another effort and I just came right across it. It was easy. And for some reason, I figured it was some kind of miracle that I found this thing. So I found it, and I wasn't sure it was it, but it was a book, and the book was titled "The End of the Road," and no, not the end of the road. It was "The Rest of the Road," and so I got the book. It was written by a guy named Don Blanding in 1937. Coincidentally enough, that was the same year my parents were married. So it had some meaning.
And that was their anniversary on New Year's Eve. Yeah, and so he
always did that toast. And I'm going to read that toast to you. And it said, "If the rest of the road is half as good as the half that has gone before, I'll swing along with a singing heart and pray to the Lord for more. I ease my bones at the halfway house and turn my remembering gaze from the twisting path that my feet have sought to the new untrodden ways. How long, how far, how hard, how fine, how heavy or light the load. If it's half as good as the road I've known, here's hail to the rest of the road." And that was his toast that he said.
Cheers.
And there's hail to the rest of the road. So that was his toast, and we put that in these books so everybody will have a chance to maybe carry that on.
Cool.
I will carry it on if no one else does. That's what I have to say.
Good.
So we can just pick a spot here. It doesn't matter.
What I've done is we've taken my dad's and mom's ashes and mixed them and put them in this plastic bucket, and we'll spread those. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Wherever.
Don't just put them in a pile, spread them.
Get a sifter. Okay, Mo. Just the king, just the shall return.
Yeah.
Pete, back up just a little bit.
All
Right.
right. Cool.
That's what he wanted. Wanted to see. So he can.
He's here now.
Thank you, John.
Can you clap?
So that's basically what we've done, and of course we're going to have a